where are you? And where will you be on this day? A day that is coming. So let's look at verse 11. And then I saw a great white throne.
Typical mystery of purity.
Greater than any other throne. A throne of absolute sovereignty. A throne that is not governed or tempered by councils and committees. The one who sits on this throne will never be voted out of office. There's no changing of the guard. If we go from Genesis to Revelation, we find that the one who sits there has all power, has all authority, has all sovereignty. No one debates with him. No one can pry up his hand when he sits it on the table. No one can hold his hand down when he seeks to raise it. He does all things. You will melt before God like a tiny wax figurine before a blast furnace. The one who sits on that throne. In Psalms 2, we understand that he laughs when the nations rage. His authority can be described in this way. If you took all his enemies that have ever lived on earth, if you belched out every one of his enemies out of hell, if you were to bring every enemy, every God-hater, every army, every country, every lord, every authority, both spiritual and material, if you brought them all together in a gigantic, massive army that no one could count, and they rushed the throne of God, it would be like a tiny gnat beating its head against a world made of granite. It would have no effect whatsoever. And according to Psalms 2, he would laugh and he would not even come to his feet. This is the God with whom you must deal. This is the God before whom one day you will stand. So you're trying to frighten me. And listen to me, there are some things I know quite well for which it is very wise to be frightened. This is not a possibility. This is a certainty. And you're going to stand there on that day. You are. You will stand naked with no covering before the living God. It says, I saw a great throne. I saw a white throne. You and I cannot even conceive of cleanliness. You and I cannot even conceive of what it means to be pure, to be holy.
This is the King of Kings, and he's the Judge of Judges, and it's the Tribunal of Tribunals, and there's no court of appeal after it. The verdict is final. 2 people at least have said to me this week, there is no justice in the earth today. Maybe there isn't. But I hang on to a word that says, shall not the Judge of all the earth do right? Here he is. He's the King immortal, invisible, the only wise God, to whom be praise and glory forever. The picture of Jesus here is not the picture of a pathetic individual pushed around by anybody who wants to push him around. I think sometimes we think we're going to march up and say, well, you know, Jesus, do you know how many years I served you and how many souls I won for you and how many sermons I preached for you? Oh, no. Well, what will he be like in heaven? Well, I'll tell you what the book says he'll be like. It says his hair is as white as snow. His feet are like burnished brass. His face is like the sun in its strength. His eyes are living coals of fire. His tongue is a sharp two-edged sword. And here is John, who used to lean his head on the bosom of Jesus and hear that divine heartbeat. The man that I believe knew more about Jesus than anyone else. And when he saw Jesus there on his throne in his majesty, with his face brighter than the sun, with his feet like burnished brass, with his eyes like flames of fire, with his tongue majestic and his voice like the sound of many waters, John, the man who had walked with him and talked with him for 3 years, says that when I saw him, I fell at his feet as dead. What do you think you and I are going to do? We see there the Judge in all his awesome majesty, in all his glory. I want to tell you something. There'll be 1,000 million or trillion people when you stand there at the judgment seat without your wife to lean on, or your husband, or your preacher, or a friend. And Paul is writing in the 14th chapter of Romans, and he says we, so he writes home even to believers at the judgment seat. We must all, there's no exception. We must stand at the judgment seat of Christ. You can't send your lawyer, you can't send a representative, you can't send a preacher who says, well, I understand this person who's always falling up and down and in and out, and he didn't know where they were. I'll explain it to you. And the Lord says you won't do anything of the kind. Can you see those millions of unholy dead? All all the criminals that ever lived, every prostitute that ever went on the tour? Can you think of all the men who make millions out of pornography? Can you think of the pimps who pollute those little girls and they go to all the hellholes? Can you imagine when God takes hold of history and empties it? When every man that ever walked the streets of ancient Babylon with all its lusts, or Corinth, which was just one colossal cesspool of impurity, all that happened at Las Vegas last night is going to be thrown on the screen in eternity. Every judge that sits in the high court is going to be judged one day by an infallible judge. How long will it take? I don't know. And I don't care, because we're not going anywhere.
I plead the blood over you. Thank Jesus.